I want to bring in my guest in studio right now. I'm joined by Rafael Yerusalmi, former senior intelligence officer for the IDF and security analyst, as well as Erel Margalit, founder and chairman of Jerusalem Venture Partners and former member of Israeli Parliament for the Labor Party, as well as former member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Rafael, let's begin with talking about the IDF overnight targeted raid in the Gaza Strip. Really, all signs point that they're preparing for this ground operation, trying to take out as many targets as they can, but it remains difficult as those targets remain in underground tunnels.
That's right, and that's why you have to have this incursion inside Gazan territory, even though it's still okay to wait a little more and bomb from the air and with the artillery, and the more we can do that without entering with our troops on the ground, the better. This being said, we have to prepare the ground. The operation of last night, led by the Givati Brigade, included the entry into Gaza of armored vehicles and tanks, which was already a feat in itself, since there are many obstacles prepared against tanks on the ground, and the attack positions were equipped with anti-tank missiles, and they managed to destroy these positions before any anti-tank missile could hit them, which is of course a success. They operated a few things. First of all, intelligence gathering. Coming into the enemy territory allows you to gather intelligence. It makes you check the capacities. The fact that we could enter and come out unharmed, it's a checking of our capacities to do so, maybe on a larger scale. They prepared also the ground for future attacks. It's in two ways. There are some perimeters that they have booby-trapped, so it will be like perimeters we don't go into, and if the Hamas goes into, they'll have a bad surprise. And others are perimeters that are technologically prepared for the attack. We have a few surprises of our own for the Hamas, and for that we need sometimes on the ground certain sensors or technological things to help us do so. So all in all, it's a very positive action. It also shows that we do not have to go tomorrow morning in a huge offensive. We can maybe wait a little longer. We can also, it's very nerve-wracking for the enemy in the tunnels or wherever it is hiding. It's very nerve-wracking for them to see that, first of all, we're waiting, we're taking our time. Now we are the masters. We decide if and when we go in, and then we can still allow ourselves to have this kind of operation. So all in all, very good news, and I think it's also a relief psychologically for our troops that are waiting very impatiently on the border, and for the civilian population of Israel, who is now seeing some like real action. I mean, we know there's a lot of action from the air and the artillery, of course, but now they see something that shows determination.
It's starting to be more tangible now. Also, as we keep our eye on the Gaza Strip, everything that's happening there, also more calls for aid to enter the area as well. Reports that Hamas is calling for protests also from Israel, from the West Bank, from the entire Muslim world to protest on Friday and Sunday, urging more aid to be let in through the Rafah border crossing. But Erel, this is a difficult situation.
It is, but I think that we need to be smart about it and surgical. Rafael spoke about a surgical entrance into the field. I was a commander in an anti-tank unit, and so I know what the hunters of the tanks are doing and when they're hiding. So I think it was very important that those units are there. First of all, the clearing the road, and the other thing that they're doing, Israel's being very surgical. The more you know, the more surgical you could be, and you can avoid, you can hit your enemies, Hamas, but you could do your best to avoid hitting any civilian targets. Now, with respect to the aid, I think it's important. I think Israel needs to differentiate between the people of Gaza and between Hamas. The more people understand that Israel has been doing a lot. I was in the Security and Foreign Affairs Committee in the Knesset. We were the ones that started the ability of Gazans to work in Israel. Normative people of Gaza, good people that were working here, that were doing their job, and Israelis were taking care of their livelihood. And I think that it's important to get that message across. Hamas is the worst thing for the Palestinian population in Gaza and for the Palestinian cause. There are justified issues in the Palestinian cause which are not massacre people, and the Palestinians themselves need to realize it. You don't want to associate yourself with Hamas, with ISIS, or with other terrorist group. We need to make a distinction between the population and Hamas that we need to go after with all our might, and the population that if we can do things that are forthcoming and are not hurting our security operation, we should do it, and we should be clear about it to the world that we are distinguishing between the people and between Hamas. Hamas will have no place to hide. The people should get help if we can give it to them.
I want to note that as we're taking a look right now, the IDF spokesperson is about to address the IDF headquarters. Let's
IDF troops under the Givati Brigade executed a ground raid using tanks in the northern Gaza Strip. They have taken down terrorists and destroyed terror infrastructure. This is part of our readiness for the next stages of the war. Through this raid, we take down terrorists, we take care of threats, we dismantle explosives, neutralize terrorists in order to enable the next stages of the war for the ground troops. The mission lasted a few hours and they have left at the end with no injuries to our forces. In the northern front, over the next day, we took down 5 squads of Hezbollah who attempted to fire towards our territory. They were eliminated in their movement towards firing, and this is how we'll continue to operate aggressively against anyone who attempts to place a threat against us. We'll find us determined. Beyond that, overnight, land-to-air missile was fired towards a drone in Lebanon area. The drone was not hit, and the missile was thwarted by missile defense systems. We targeted the source of the fire. We neutralized the threat and will continue to do so. Any fire towards our drones will be thwarted, and we will hit the source of the fire. We're in strong defense and in determined offense, and whoever attacks us will pay for it with his life. In the home front, there is no change in the instructions. I wish to stress we must not be too calm. Listening to the instructions saves lives. We saw this in Rishon LeZion last night in a hit on a building. The protected areas in the building were not hurt. This emphasizes the importance of the instructions of the Home Front Command. This is how we will be able to go back to routine amid the war. We have managed to open some educational institutes. We update you on the true picture in real time. This would enable the public to go back to routine during the war. So far, we have given notices to families of 309 IDF fallen soldiers and 224 kidnapped persons. This information continues to change according to the intelligence information that we have. Each sends us to the family. We continue together with operational efforts. We continue to hold raids to collect information and to understand who is missing, who is kidnapped. That number may change. And we're standing in 224 kidnapped. Our hearts are with the bereaved families. We feel their pain. We'll continue to be with them and update the families of the kidnapped and missing with every development and with every piece of information that we hold. First of all, the families and then the media. The effort to return the kidnapped is a top priority. In every way, civilian, operational, intelligence, and this is how we will continue to operate. I will give another update in the evening. Thank you very much.
You were just hearing from the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari addressing the public on this 20th day of the war here in Israel. I want to come back to my guests in studio to unpack a little bit of what Daniel said there. One of the most interesting things to me, I think, is talking about the Home Front Command and urging residents to continue to listen to the Home Front Command. We're in day 20 of this. No signs of it stopping now, but people are tired. People are getting complacent. This is almost becoming the new normal in a sense. And so how dangerous is that shift in perspective for the Israeli citizens?
I think that there needs to be a chief of staff and command for the civilian population as well. One needs to understand that the evacuation has happened obviously in the south, not in an organized fashion. Of course, we were surprised, but in the north it is happening in organized fashion. A lot of the families need support. They are very nickeling and diming the families, the finance ministry, whether you're 4 kilometers from the border or 6 kilometers for the border or 7. People need to get the support because they cannot afford to pay for hotels on their own, and the government needs to step up and not play games. The other thing, there needs to be a very clear policy. I was running the policy for the small businesses support, and you can be very complicated, and you can be stingy, or you can have a red and green route. Most of the people should be getting support from the green route because it's very clear that their businesses were in the line of fire and they were evacuated. The government needs to be proactive. The other thing that needs to be understood, the education ministry, kids need to be contained. And there's certain things that we did during the corona. We have a nonprofit organization that's working with the education ministry. We know that they can, but they need to initiate the containment of the kids. Some of the kids can go to the schools in the places they were evacuated. Yesterday in Jerusalem, we're in Jerusalem, so we had a variety of kids that were part of the learning program and part of, I know we had a big set of birthdays for kids. It needs to be contained, and the education ministry needs to step up and understand that that's going to be part of the backbone of what Israeli society needs to step up for. And so in the north and the south, the finance ministry, the education ministry, people need to be proactive and not sit and guard their bits and pieces of diming and nickeling some of the population. It's time to be generous and clear.
Especially as we see more and more people continuing to be evacuated, not only from the south, from the north as well. Raphael, we're hearing that the people that have been evacuated specifically from the south, the time that they can return to their home keeps being delayed. This is an ongoing issue, and the IDF and the Israeli military recognizes that.
Yes, and they should also recognize that these people, whatever is decided, will not go back to their home if the Hamas is still around after this war. That's it. Either you annihilate the Hamas and then they will go back home. If not, whatever the government decides or the army decides and the Hamas is still in place, they won't go back. Why would they go back? To have another massacre and another? And so that's it. We're all now hostages of the terrorist organizations. We have to eliminate them. If not, we will remain hostages, the whole of the country, not just the north and the south. Now, I must salute the Israeli population because, okay, it's nice to have a front, an internal command. It's nice to have advice from the government, but we function. The government doesn't function. We do. And the solidarity and the discipline of the Israeli people is an example for everybody in the world, and you can rely upon it that if we win this war, it will be thanks to the soldiers, but also to the civilians. And it's true that there might be a kind of routine after a while, and people, you've got to breathe, you got to go out, especially the children. So it might be a risk, but you know what? We made that mistake during the corona. We closed the schools. The damage, the psychological damage to the children by closing the schools is much worse than taking a chance. I'm of course speaking mostly of schools which have shelters. If there is a shelter in the school, I mean, what's the difference? There are some houses without shelters. So if there are protected areas and shelters in the school, go to school. If you can hide in a concrete building, go and build. We have no economic depth. I mean, mean, we always speak of strategic depth, like the Israel is small, but also we cannot stay for months and months without doing economy being stopped with 350,000 reserve people called that are mostly young people who work. So at some point we have to make the economy run again.
I think that's, you bring up just the best point, because exactly as we're talking about the physical toll, the emotional toll, something that also can't be understated is the financial toll that this is taking on the Israeli population right now.
Yeah, so I have to say, I agree with Rafael, but I have to say that in the high-tech sector, we're moving forward, and the world needs to know that the Israeli high-tech industry is continuing to move forward. We're doing three things. One, we're gathering with the HR people, the human resources people in every organization, and taking care of the employees, taking care of their families, understanding what is their mental situation and whether they're okay. And I think every company needs to do that. The CEO, the head of HR, people need to reach out to their employees. Second thing is financials. Companies to pay salaries, they need to pay, meet their payments, they need to go on, and so the CFOs and the investors need to come together and make sure that everything's okay. The third thing is the CEOs and the executive leadership of each company. We are very focused that companies will meet their targets for 2023, will plan 2024. The Israeli high-tech industry knew the intifada. I'm from Jerusalem. Second intifada was very difficult, but we built a company like CyberArk to be $5.5 billion when it started in the second intifada. So we know what it is to build an economy during the crisis. And so my message to a lot of the companies, a lot of the employees, continue to move forward. Continue to move forward and do it in a way which is attentive to the employees, which create groups, which talks about the problems that people may have, because about 10% of the workforce in the high-tech sector is recruited. But there's a bunch of other people that can continue. And talk to the international peers in your company. Have them understand that you're continuing to work, because some of the biggest things that you can do in order to help yourself, yes, take care of your family, you need to be recruited, you need to go, but continue to work and create and do things both with your family and with your company, because it gives you sanity and it gives people around you a good sense of direction.
Now, you say the high-tech sector is moving forward despite,
yes,
10, 15, I've even seen reports of 20% of the reservists leaving this high-tech sector. We're also seeing reports from the S&P downgrading Israel's financial score from stable to negative. That's taking a major hit also from the economy and shows the repercussions of this.
But what people should realize is what Rafael was speaking about. Look at the resilience of the Israeli society. We have criticism about some of the functions of the government, both on the security level and the civilian level, but look at the society, how it's coming together. Look at people, how they're helping each other. You see the spirit of Israel sometimes in the way that people take care of each other. That spirit will continue to be there when the companies are being built, when you do things at adversity, and Israel knows how to build things at adversity. And the message is that every venture capitalist and every CEO, and I'm not saying we don't have difficulties. I just came back from a conversation with 130 of my investors, some of the largest sovereign funds in Singapore, in France, and in the US, different parts of the world. They wanted to understand, first of all, how are you? How are the people that are working in the companies? And the second thing is, are you guys continuing? And the answer is unequivocally yes.
There's no doubt to the strength of the Israeli population and how they will come together here despite all of these economic, financial troubles. One question, though, Rafael, that does need to be answered specifically after this, even if we move past everything that does happen, the Israeli military still has so many questions to answer, specifically when it comes to this intelligence breach. I think that might be one of the hardest points for the Israeli public to move past.
Well, the military will have and has taken responsibility, at least the highest commanders. But there's been a huge misconception of what was going on. So, okay, there is the misconception at the political level. Mr. Netanyahu, for instance, for 15 years, so that it was good to have the Hamas in place in Gaza, because he wanted to divide the Palestinian Authority into two camps. So he thought it was great, and he let the Hamas become what it is today, military power. So that was the misconception at the top. the doctrine. Now, tactically on the ground and then in the intelligence services, there is the real problem, because there was a huge mistake. The misconception cannot be guilty of these massacres. It's guilty of a mistake on the global level. These massacres, they could have been avoided. That's it. We have today testimonies of soldiers, mostly girls who were observing the border, who reported the problem, and this is a mistake, this has to be repaired. They are limited to report only figures and facts. They cannot give their opinion, and it's very important. If you put a human being instead of a camera, it may be the advantage is that the human being feels stuff. They have gut feelings, which the camera doesn't have. So they should not be limited as they were to just give figures. So many Toyota cars passing by. But even if you limit to the figures they gave, the number of cars day by day, they spoke about training. It was once or twice a week that the Hamas was training near the border, then it was every day, then it was a few times a day. And there were more and more cars, and they were telling that to their direct commanders, but even their direct commanders, lieutenants and captains, can't speak to the clever guys in the intelligence units. So there is something that was very, very wrong. But you know, we're at war. This will be settled after the war. We have just to take the lessons quickly for what we need now for the war.
Sometimes getting hit really hard wakes you up. There are very good, exceptional units in the IDF. The best units in the world, whether it's Special Forces, whether it's the Givati Brigade, Golani, which I'm very proud of because I was there at San Khanim. There are very, very good units. I think that the Army needs to wake up because the training needs to be different, the readiness needs to be different, and things need to be managed different conceptually. And conceptually, I have to say, it's not just about the military. It's also about being a statesman. If you're saying no to Hamas in Gaza, you need to start understanding what it is that you want to drive. And we need to remember that with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, we had
learning a lot from this. Unfortunately, we have to go for a quick break. But Erel, Margalit, Raphael Yerushalmi, thank you for both of your insight as always.
Thanks.